Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. The COVID pandemic should have removed all doubt on the question of trusting our government. We know we can't, but tonight we'll expose even more of the details on the risks they're allowed to take where our health is concerned and how they're exempt from accountability to the public. Our guest tonight is former pharma executive Sasha Latypova. Sasha, thank you for being with us tonight.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Anyway, you were a former pharma exec, and now you're kind of on the, I guess you could say, other side of the aisle. You're certainly more critical of them. Let's talk about kind of what led to that.
Well, I had retired from the industry before COVID, so it wasn't because of COVID or anything. I left the industry. I was having a great time, and when COVID started, a lot of things didn't make sense to me. And then especially when they started talking about mRNA injections as vaccines, I was very shocked because I knew it was a very dangerous class of drugs, and previously wasn't even allowed to be tested in healthy volunteers. And now they're planning to inject everyone on the planet, including pregnant women and children. And so for me, that was a really big red flag, and I started investigating more closely after that. So that's how I started writing and speaking about this.
So you were kind of taken out of retirement because of what you saw going on.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
And I'm sure that since you were, fairly high up in the industry, and when you started pushing back, I'm sure that made some people unhappy, to say the least.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people were unhappy, but thankfully, I wasn't employed anywhere, and I wasn't, it wasn't threatening my income or my position or anything, and I didn't care what my previous contacts in the industry thought of this. But I just couldn't sit by, and people needed to hear the truth.
So the term EUA countermeasures. Let's talk about that a little bit. And you do have some slides here that you've sent us, and we'll show that to the audience as we go along. Let's talk about those countermeasures and what that applies to.
Yeah, so a lot of people, especially a lot of and professionals, don't understand this either. And frankly, nobody, even on the health freedom side, is talking about this except for myself and maybe a couple of my colleagues. Now, it's a very important. This is a very important point. So all these mRNA vaccines, so-called vaccines on the market, are actually legal status is EUA countermeasure, and this is a very specific category in pharmaceutical law that is very, very problematic. And I've been speaking and writing about this, and this needs to be stopped, and this part of law needs to be removed, because it legalizes murder. It's a license to kill, actually. So what people need to understand, if you can go to the slide. So in the U.S. pharmaceutical law, there are several what they're called regulatory pathways. These are like lanes in which you can get to the market. So you have to upfront declare how you're going to develop your product, and you must, as a pharmaceutical sponsor, receive investigational drug exemption from the FDA to start clinical trials. And this is called normal regulatory pathway for normal drugs, which are supposed to comply with the entire U.S. code for pharmaceutical drug development and compliance. And so that requires proper clinical trials, investigational review board approving clinical trial protocol. Very importantly, informed consent is critical, and it's part of the normal clinical trial and normal development. Also, the pharmaceutical sponsors, very importantly, must be in compliance with current good manufacturing practices, which is a very extensive set of rules and regulations, which require all the products to be labeled accurately, and every vial, every product as dispensed. So it's not even a vial, it's a dose. Every dose must be in compliance with current good manufacturing practices.
You mean you shouldn't have a blank? You shouldn't have a blank sheet enclosed in the that the vaccine comes with?
Exactly. So the insert, the product insert, which is a label, approved label by the FDA, must be accompanied every package of the product, and then the providers must provide informed consent according to this label to the subject. So this is all, and I'm describing, this is all proper pharmaceutical regulatory pathway for proper drugs. In about 97, there's this like second gray box if you click on this slide. Yeah, so in around late 90s, the FDA introduced this additional pathway, which is still under normal drug development. It's called expanded access use, or EAU. And that was simply to say, for very terminally, severely ill people who may or may not be able to participate in clinical trials, they can, through their healthcare provider, they can get access to drugs that are still in clinical trials on a compassionate use or right to try kind of principle. But all these requirements are still pretty much enforceable for them. So good manufacturing practice, compliance, informed consent, IRB, all the rules must be still followed. It's just that expanded access use. Now, in the industry, colloquially, we called it EUA, or emergency use authorization. It was just a colloquial way it was easier to say than EAU for some reason. And so everybody was calling it an EUA, even though proper legal term for it is expanded access use, or EAU. Now, then in 2005, with updated public health emergency law and countermeasures, the FDA or US Congress approved this. There was a new section put into the Food and Drug Cosmetics Act, and it's called Section 564. And this is specifically for EUA countermeasures under public health emergencies. So this is the only proper actually designation for EUA products, is this one. And it's a non-investigational pathway. So this is the third lane, which I call license to kill, and completely needs to be removed from US law. But this is I'm going to describe what this does. So once the FDA designates a product under this section 564, under existing public health emergency announcement or declaration, then if a product is designated EUA countermeasure, then everything that's illegal for investigational drugs is now fully legal for these products. They do not have to comply with good manufacturing practices. No informed consent is required, or, well, they're saying it's required, but it's effectively made moot. So legally, it's not possible to give informed consent, because for these products, there is no data. Informed consent means you tell the people truthfully all the data that you know, all the adverse events, all the safety issues, how effective this product has been so far. So you have to tell people all that. For these EUA countermeasures, you can't, because this data doesn't exist. You can't collect it because there's no enforced compliance, and therefore you can't tell people, you can't tell providers because you don't know. So literally, this is just a blank. That's why the inserts are blank. This is a cat in the bag that they roll out under public health emergency declaration, and then they're saying you don't have to comply with anything. And I'll show you in more detail. The only way these products go on the market is based on the opinion of one person, HHS secretary. HHS secretary who says, in my opinion, they may be effective. And that's it. That's the entire regulatory pathway.
What's the reason for doing that? Why would they do that?
So there are ostensible reasons, and then, what I think the reasons are real reasons, but, people will call me conspiracist for it. But this is based on, over 3 years, 4 years of investigating this. and looking into U.S. law going back for 200 years to 1700s and figuring out, all these vaccine-related laws in the U.S. So ostensible reason for this introduction of this piece of legislation was, if there is a really dire situation, if we get attacked with a nuclear bomb, or we get attacked with like some really bad chemical weapons or something, then we should have an ability for the government to roll out whatever treatments, even if they are not approved and haven't gone through proper regulatory channels of approval, but just because of the emergency and urgency, we can just roll out anything that we have and give it to people. And of course, there is no way to mandate these products. It's also in the law, it says that you can't mandate the use of these products. You can make them available.
But you can't really give informed consent because you don't know enough about it. So what do you tell them? Hey, here, try this. Maybe it helps. I mean, you still got to have a basis for why it might help. The HHS secretary, I guess, makes the decision, but wouldn't he have to give some reason of, okay, here's what it might do and here's why I think it might do it? Or
in the U.S. law, no. He does not have to give any reasons. It's only his opinion. He can consult with whoever he wants to consult. And by the way, the HHS secretary is a lawyer. He's not a doctor. But his opinion is enough for every man, woman, and child to be injected with these monstrosities, with these poisons. But anyway, so like I'm telling you, the ostensible reason was because if there is a dire emergency, end of the world, we get nuclear bomb, well, you can't require that every treatment that we were going to offer is going to go through the clinical trials, but you have to tell the people, right? And you can't mandate it, these things. So now you see the FDA did a bait and switch. FDA and HHS and everybody involved did a bait and switch. So these products went on the market using this EUA countermeasures pathway where nothing is required. Yeah, so here on this slide, this is the slide, by the way, from FDA. It's not, I didn't make this. This comes from the FDA. This is their own flow chart of how these products go on the market. I only put the yellow box as a notation. And you can see that what I just said, that this is the entire regulatory pathway of how these products get on the market. First, you need the emergency declaration. An emergency declaration can be issued by the DoD, DHS, HHS. So they can declare some sort of emergency. In this case, we had HHS declare a public health emergency. And then the HHS secretary writes that declaration saying that, in my opinion, circumstances exist that justify having a national public health emergency. This declaration for COVID was made when we had maybe 11 cases in the US and no deaths.
Wow.
But that declaration was made based on nothing, absolutely nothing. He said it's the end of the world. We have to, and public health emergency declaration is equivalent to declaring war on US territory legally.
You mean as far as the amount of control the government has?
Yes, it's the same type of emergency as would be a war on US soil.
When they declare this, when they declare a public health emergency, and what else does that allow them to do? Do you know?
Everything. So then they have this whole of government approach, which basically legally all the branches, executive branches, merge, and it's, as I said, it's equivalent to a declaration of war. So DoD was in charge of this deployment, right? So they deployed
during COVID.
U.S. military. Yeah, his government deployed U.S. military onto U.S. soil, onto the states that are not presumably at war. And we were told, oh, it's just a health event, right? So that was a lie, number one. They deployed the military under military law. These vaccines were ordered under Defense Production Act. So the government compelled pharmaceutical manufacturers to produce these products. And because pharmaceutical manufacturers are not stupid, they, around 2005, they demanded this PrEP Act, which absolves them. This is another piece of legislation which needs to be nullified ASAP. So the PrEP Act is absolving all manufacturers from any liability. So in addition to the US law explicitly saying that you don't have to be in compliance with any pharmaceutical law, they have an extra layer of liability protection through this PrEP Act, which also says that no matter what you do, and even if you kill and injure people with whatever you do under these public health emergency protocols or products, you are totally absolved of liability. U.S. government extends you sovereign, and Pfizer actually called it in their court documents, a derivative sovereign immunity.
Derivative sovereign immunity.
The derivative sovereign immunity was given to Pfizer through this PrEP Act, and this is how they've defended themselves throughout. Like, that's why nobody has succeeded in any case against Pfizer, is because of this.
So wait a minute, I'm sorry. The federal government gave a private entity, a commercial private entity, derivative sovereign immunity.
Yes, in fact, they extended not just to Pfizer, but everyone, all the pharmaceutical companies, all the medical device companies, all hospitals who murdered people with remdesivir and ventilators, every healthcare provider who injected anyone, anybody in the supply chain who delivered these products, all the private employers who forced their employees to get these products. So anyone in the chain of command, coming from the DoD and HHS, all the way down to a pharmacy who injected the people there, they're all given sovereign, derivative sovereign immunity from any liability as long as they follow HHS's orders.
That is crazy. I'm not doubting you. I'm just saying, and you know, here's the thing that really gets me. So, and we just, right before we started this, I was doing another show. Anyhow, the issue of nullification, you know, and the fact that our Constitution was a creation of the states. The states created the federal government. The federal government did not create states. The Constitution is not a pact between the federal government and the states, because the federal government didn't exist in current form, and the states created it. So we delegated them powers. So it's already, you know, I've heard the concept of dual sovereignty, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It would seem to me like the states are the sovereign. They delegated the power to the federal government to do certain things, but there's no way that the federal government could legitimately give this derivative sovereign immunity to a private entity. That's just, I'm not doubting you. I'm just saying that's how much more egregious this is. Now, what,
this is an atrocity. Like, that's why I'm saying these laws, this EUA countermeasure nonsense, and PrEP Act definitely must be nullified. Those are number one things that need to go. And nobody is talking about this. Nobody, you know, they're doing this fake show, Rescue the Republic with Russell Brand, and, you know, not a single person brings it up there. And that's for a reason, because they're all playing for the team that's doing this to us.
Okay, I mean, I know who Russell Brand is. I've watched him some. I don't watch him. Who are they? Who is all of that?
Well, there's a big event going on in DC right now, Rescue the Republic.
Okay.
Today, like yesterday and today, and everyone is there, and this is just a political show. And Russell Brand is there, and Jordan Peterson, and, you know, all kinds of big names. And this is supposed to be all about, you know, a lot of it's supposed to be about this, and not a single mention of any of these laws.
Do you think they don't know? Maybe they don't actually.
Oh, they do know, absolutely. I know specific people there who know for sure, and no.
Wow.
Nobody wants to touch this.
Yeah. Why? Well, I'm going to ask you two questions. Number one, just to clarify, the this allowed them to mandate these things, or they still they
So
weren't
yeah,
they weren't
I can explain
they
how
couldn't mandate it, but they
couldn't.
still could suggest it without getting in trouble, essentially.
Yeah, so I can explain how they mandated. So as I said, I started talking about they did this bait and switch to mandate these things. Mandates are illegal, but the government, the HHS, FDA, and DoD, basically did this, lying and fraud to the public to then force the mandates. So if we can go back to the slide 4, and yeah, so I'll finish on this quickly. So this is how the products get on the market. As I said, HHS secretary writes a memo saying, I believe there are circumstances justifying public health emergency and PrEP Act declaration for this category of, COVID products. And then all the COVID products. And then the second memo that he writes is, I believe this product may be effective. That's it. That's the entire regulatory pathway that's required for these products. And as you can see, nowhere on the slide it says, oh, and then clinical trials must happen, because you can't, because you do one memo and then you do the other memo, and that's
Right.
it. And if in his opinion, there's no clinical, in the law it says clinical trial data if available, so it doesn't have to be available.
Right. Right.
So that's how it goes on the market. Then let's go to page 6 quickly. So, and just so that you guys, I'm not making this up, this is direct citation from the US law. And as you can see, it says that these products, EUA countermeasures, no matter what, shall not be deemed adulterated or misbranded. So adulterated and misbranded is what pharmaceutical law prevents, supposed to prevent products from being adulterated and misbranded. So that you can't, as a manufacturer, sell products which contain ingredients that you haven't declared, or ingredients in wrong proportions, or some contaminants, or you're lying about it. So misbranding is lying. And as you know, several states have sued Pfizer for lying, but Pfizer hasn't lied. Pfizer delivered the fraud that the government ordered. And so that's why, again, these suits have not been successful, and they just keep getting thrown out of court.
So in these suits that against Pfizer and others, everything you're telling me, has this been brought up? The fact that, okay, look, there's essentially no way you can hold Pfizer or whatever. Does that come out in court? Is there a record of that?
Yes, there are multiple cases where this came up on the defense side. This is how Pfizer defends themselves. They bring this up and they say, we got sovereign derivative immunity, we got PrEP Act, and we have this. We are under EUA countermeasures, and we're not lying about anything.
So
because legally we can't lie.
So why do you think, you mentioned that the Save the Republic, why do you think those people that you say know about this, why do you think they're not speaking up about it?
Because that whole Rescue the Republic is basically supporting Trump campaign, and Trump won't, as you know, his position, he won't admit that these things caused any harm. And even in the most recent interview, he gave an answer to Charlotte Atkinson. She asked again about why you're promoting COVID vaccines. And he said, I was mandated to deliver Operation Warp Speed. This is a very interesting statement. Mandated by whom?
Whoa.
And
who said they were mandated?
Trump. Trump did. And Charlotte Atkinson, a recent interview, she asked this question, and I can send you the link even to this specific answer.
Yeah.
And in the answer, he mentions that he was mandated. Doesn't say by whom, but that's my question, by whom? And then he says, well, I have to woo Democrats, and they all love vaccines, so I must continue lying to them about it. And then on the he also said, oh, and they are studying long-term safety effects, and the data will be available in 2025. Well, breaking news, nobody is studying long-term safety effects, because as you remember, all the vaccines, so these original studies, which started in 2020, were supposed to go until 2025, but they were unblinded in 2 months, and the control group was eliminated. So nobody is studying any long-term safety effects. But that was the answer. So Trump's position is, these are wonderful. Operation Warp Speed was a huge success. We defeated COVID, and you guys should all shut up. And millions of people who got injured or killed, it doesn't matter. So that's why that whole event will not say a word about this.
Now, I definitely would like to get that link from you, because I want to go look at it. I mean, not that I'm not doubting you. I want to look at it, because I know that for the longest time that was a problem that a lot of us had with Trump, was that he was still touting the whole warp speed thing. And he stood by Fauci for way too long, in my opinion, and all the others. But recently he hasn't, at least publicly, been saying much about it. I thought that maybe somebody told him, hey, just shut up about it. And he was listening for a little while. But you're saying this is a recent interview with Cheryl Atkinson? Oh, yeah, wow. Okay.
Within the last 2 weeks or so, maybe even like 1 week. I'll send you the link, and you can look at it yourself. But that's the only reason is, Democrats obviously won't say this, and Republicans won't touch this issue, because again, we must win elections or whatever. But I doubt this is going to be addressed after elections either, because there's absolutely no interest. We've talked to so many. I wrote, my colleague my colleague Catherine Watt and I wrote a memo explaining all this material with about 700 megabytes attachments, like justifying every word that we said. And it's a 2-page memo and 700 megabytes of attachments, which we prepared on Senator Johnson's request in December of 2022. Now, and since then, there's been no interest in this.
Is that on your Substack? Because, by the way, I should have mentioned this up front. You have a Substack where you deal with these kind of issues, and then you have a separate Substack. You're also an artist, and so you have that one as well. And so people can find that on your Substack, in which, if you give us the, I think we've got the link
I have. We also have written a separate memo, which we offered as educational memo, explaining this whole thing about EUA countermeasures status, or as non-pharmaceuticals, essentially, to all the healthcare providers. And we prepared it for legislators in Louisiana, and then I sent it around and I also published it on my Substack. So anyone who wants to use it, again, for purposes of nullification, that memo explains all the law in detail about EUA countermeasures.
Have any states attempted to do anything on this? I know you mentioned Louisiana. Have they just?
So prior to their legislative session was earlier this year, like March, and we were working with them last fall and like right after Christmas break. Again, so there were a couple of legislators who were interested in this, and they tried. We even tried to meet with, because they have a new governor and new attorney general. Her child is vaccine injured, and we thought that maybe that would be, a point of interest, and we were trying to get a meeting to discuss this. We were not able to get a meeting. And the legislators in Louisiana that tried to do something about it, they said it's not going to go into any bills. But yes, that's when we said, okay, well, we can just write a letter, an educational letter that you can use with healthcare providers or whoever you want to use. So that's where we ended up. This is even with the most, I'd say, friendly and interested legislative representatives. So far it's gone nowhere.
So we can't trust HHS. Mm-hmm. I mean, is there any federal agency that deals with this kind of stuff that we can trust?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Not a single word that comes out of their mouths. Do not trust them.
And you pretty much have the receipts on all of them. I mean, CDC, FDA, whoever might come into play as far as.
Yeah, so the FDA, I can tell you, the FDA was critical in this bait and switch and removing informed consent and forcing the mandates. So FDA in this whole scheme, in this, I call it pandemic preparedness racket and criminal cartel, they are playing the role of certifying the fraud, and it's a critical role. And there is I also wrote a Substack about this, and this was maybe in 21 or 22. Peter Marks, who is head of FDA, CBER, he was subpoenaed, and he provided deposition in court in one of the cases. I think it was a case against mandates. And in that deposition, he actually explains how they removed requirement for informed consent. So he basically says, okay, you can't mandate these products, but we asked Pfizer to provide us some evidence of, he calls BLA compliant lots. So basically saying, okay, well, there are a couple of vaccine lots that Pfizer has produced that were in compliance with good manufacturing practices. Although that never happened. They basically asked Pfizer to lie. Pfizer lied in paperwork. And then Peter Marks says, well, we have these nine lots. Yeah, so Pfizer identified 9 lots that were BLA compliant. And because Pfizer themselves self-certified that they had 9 BLA compliant lots, therefore, we can say that anything that they ship whatever they ship, some of it may be compliant with BLA, and that justifies removing informed consent. The pharmacists do not have to tell people anything about this. And then also afterwards they said, oh, and now we can mandate them because, again, there's a possibility in principle that Pfizer may be able to ship good manufacturing practice compliant lots. So,
why, I understand that some companies, don't necessarily care about producing a quality product. They want to make claims that, sound like they'll fix this, fix that, cure this, cure that, and they want people to buy them. I got it. But I mean, why? What's their goal in putting out things that are going to hurt and kill people? What's the goal behind that?
Well, I get this question a lot, and I'm like, you have to ask them. I don't sit in their heads. I don't know why they insist on killing people, but at this point, you cannot treat it as not intentional. It is intentional, because every single act, and I said that was intentional even in 2021, because as a pharmaceutical executive, if you see something like this, in 2021, when they just early months, those were the most poisonous product came on the market first 4 months of 2021. And when we saw the rates of adverse events and deaths, it was just absolutely shocking. There was in January of 2021, so this is just a couple of weeks of rollout of this product. There are news reports, you can find them online. Moderna's lot was flagged in Orange County, California for excessive number of anaphylactic shock reactions. And it was stopped in Orange County, or at least Orange County Health Department issued a warning. And this was all over national news. It was on Fox News. It was even on ABC and stuff like that. And that lot wasn't removed from the market. It continued. So I saw this. They continued selling it all over, or pushing it all over the United States, administering it, and until it ran out in March. And it's associated with at least 65 deaths all over the United States and over 3,200 serious adverse events. So nothing happened. They did not remove it. They kept administering the lot, which they themselves flagged for anaphylactic shock. On any normal, well-meaning regulatory environment, government would require removal of that product. If you're how many recalls do you get from the dealer for like a missing sticker?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So here we have deaths, 65 deaths, which is staggering. This is like 65 deaths would kill an entire $1 billion product, be removed from the market, and the whole class would be designated as absolutely dangerous, right? For any normal pharmaceutical product that I'm aware of. I worked in drugs for a long time. 65 deaths would be a catastrophe. It would be a scandal. It would be your career is over, right? Here, nothing happened. They kept pushing it. After they had 10 people or over 10 people dropped from anaphylactic shock, which is another staggering event in one location, they kept pushing it. So after they kept pushing it, 65 people died.
And at the same time they're pushing this, they're talking down and telling everybody that ivermectin and hydrochloroquine are dangerous, and those things have got years of years of proof that they're safe and effective.
Yes, and so after something like this happens, I treat it as intentional. They mean to kill people, right? So their actions speak louder than their words, and they keep killing people, and they keep denying that they're killing people, and they keep pushing for more, and they keep pushing it into children, babies, pregnant women. So you tell me what this behavior is, but I call it intentional murder.
Right.
And they need to explain their behavior.
And I have been surprised that, after so many people have apparently woken up and figured out, hey, there's something wrong here. And I know they're not as many people are taking the shots as they were. And I think most people are, concerned and critical of the whole COVID thing. But you're right. They have not slowed down pushing this. I mean, you see it on signs, billboards, you see it everywhere. They are still pushing it as if nothing's happened, nothing's wrong, and you need to get your next booster. And so it is crazy. So let me ask you this. Now, this is all under the EUA, UAE, whatever. So what about normal vaccines? Do you know anything? Well, I'm sure you do. What can you tell us about the normal vaccines?
Yeah, so we also, my colleague Catherine and I started looking into all vaccines. So she is working with another researcher on tracing all the laws in the US related to all vaccines historically back to 1700s. And what we've uncovered is absolutely shocking. All vaccines have also been non-regulated by the FDA. So they pretend that they regulate them. Up until 1973, they were not regulated by the FDA at all. They were just cooked up by CDC. They were not part of FDA regulatory mandate up until 1973, okay? And then when they were brought into the FDA regulatory oversight in 73, shortly after, I guess everyone realized that, well, this doesn't work for us if we have to be in compliance. And by 1986, that's when the Vaccine Injury Act was put in place, right?
Yeah.
To give them liability protection because of this. And if you're given liability protection, it's as if compliance doesn't exist for you. Because what's the consequence of being non-in-compliance? None. You don't have liability. And also that act obviously pushed people into, removed our constitutional right for bringing suit in the regular court. So that act pushes people into this kangaroo court that's called, vaccine injury court, where it's, 90% of claims are denied or even more.
That's a separate court, an actual separate
court. You cannot sue for if your child is permanently disabled or killed, you cannot sue in the regular court.
And that was passed in 1986. That's all part of the same law.
1986, yes, 1986. Now, the PrEP Act is a whole different ball game. Like, it's the extra layers. I said, they have numerous layers of protection because this is poison. All vaccines are poisons. And in addition, so why am I saying that they're all poisons? We also uncovered in this, sort of historical review of everything, we found work of Charles Richet, who received Nobel Prize in 1913 for work on anaphylaxis. So he was researching different plant toxins, and he found, it was working with animals, dogs primarily, and he found that you can induce the state of anaphylaxis. And anaphylaxis, people think of it as just a shock. Somebody drops because their blood pressure dropped very quickly in response to some allergic reaction. But it's not just that. It's any allergy, any like food allergy, peanut allergy. It's all anaphylaxis. It's the same phenomenon. Richet was actually against calling it allergy because he said it's all the same. And importantly, he figured out you don't need to have a toxin. You don't need to have some sort of a poison to create the state. You can create it by injecting any protein, even benign proteins like food, like milk, like peanuts, like soy, corn, albumins, which are derived from wheat, gelatin. So I was surprised everybody's allergic to all these foods. You can't have a party with kids anymore because nobody can eat anything.
Yeah.
Or, they can't all eat the same thing.
Right.
Everybody has to have a separate diet. Why? Because they have all been injected and they've all been anaphylactized. So
you mentioned you mentioned 1973 about the FDA taking over. And I'm sure you probably have this information because I know, I didn't take near as many vaccinations as my kids had to take, and certainly not as many as they want my grandkids to take. So was that all part of did the number of needed vaccines increase after the FDA took over regulation of that? Do you know?
After after the 86 Act, yes.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. But I mean, it's been growing and growing and growing. But after 86, they became they started putting all these, so they removed the constitutional religious freedom of religion because they force everyone as a condition of attending school, especially of children. It's completely, this whole strategy is to poison every child here. Especially like states like California, you can't have they deny medical exemptions. They delicense doctors who issue medical exemptions, and they've removed a constitutional right for freedom of religion because they don't honor any religious beliefs in this regard.
Okay, so who is preventing the religious exemption? Because I mean, I know that was brought up, but I wasn't sure that they had actually revoked that.
In California, there is no religious exemption.
Okay, you're talking about just California. Okay.
Oh, not just California. There are several states. There's New York. So California and New York, I think there's 4 states. But California.
Okay. I got you. Not nationwide. Okay, I just wanted to clarify. You were talking about certain states,
I'm talking
not
about
nationwide.
People live in the states, and there are some. Most of the states you have religious exemption, but California and New York are the most populous states.
Yeah.
And so for the majority of population in this country, you can't, like the child will be poisoned. And in other places, they make it very difficult.
Right.
And also a lot of people don't realize that they can't. So they make it so difficult that people don't realize that they do have the religious right, because they go and school says, no, we mandate it, you must, it's compulsory. They give all these words that, people don't realize that they can just say, no, I have freedom of religion. It's in Constitution.
So what do we?
But in California, they will deny that.
So we can't trust any of these agencies, and I think every thinking American, which excludes most of your Democrats, and all your Democrats and a good chunk of your Republicans, it excludes them. Who can we trust? What can the ordinary people do as far as what's going on with these type things, with the vaccines, with the medicines and whatnot?
Well, sorry, I lost the light in the sunset, so hold on a second. This is not going to be great, but
okay.
I didn't have a light here. So what can we do? I really don't know, other than people learning about this and learning to say no and learning to insist on your rights. Even in places like California, I think people need to speak up and insist on their rights, because if we don't speak up, as you can see, nobody is coming to save you.
Right.
They fully plan to maintain these laws that license to kill, and nobody's even talking about this. So I just want people to read, educate yourself, talk to your friends and neighbors, and if we have this sort of mass non-compliance, mass resistance, then they can't really do anything, because all of this relies on people believing the government and believing that vaccines are great, and well, there's just a little bit mistakes were made, but everything is fine. No, it's not fine.
Right. And with the UN and the WHO pushing all their garbage that they want our country to sign on to, in which our government, federal government's pretty much on board with. I mean, actually, our federal government is leading a lot of this stuff. That's another reason that states really need to keep in mind, something like nullification to deal with these type things. I mean, there's nothing else that can do. It's nullification is going to become more important as our federal government wants to cooperate more and really be subjugated to, whether you're talking the UN or whether you're talking WHO or any of those international organizations.
Yeah, they I mean, so that whole thing about WHO, as you can see, they will sign on to anything. It doesn't matter what people say, that doesn't matter what resistance we have, but the international laws are unenforceable. The international laws are enforced with domestic law.
Right.
And that's why we need to focus on the domestic law. This law, not the WHO. That's just BS public, campaign of them declaring their plans on Agenda 2030, whatever their plans are. But what they wrote into the IHRs, into the International Health Regulation Amendments, is already fully enshrined in U.S. federal law. And most of the state law.
Yeah, we already have One Health in Tennessee. So while, at the same time, while our governor is pushing back on that stuff publicly, it's already in our state. You can go to our state website. Same thing with the Agenda 2030, which they are pushing that. Whether or not it's going to be successful or not successful based on our government. Well, our government's all on board. We've got Joe Biden's climate action plan laid out on the state website in Tennessee. While our governor publicly denounces that kind of stuff, we're already cooperating with that garbage here in Tennessee and other states. So, but you're right, it'll be up to whether the states go along with these things. So the federal government can't make our states do these things if our states are not willing to do it. But most people don't know whether you're talking the 2030 issue or the health regulation issues. Most people aren't tracking it, and they don't realize that there's states, no matter what they're saying to the federal government, saying for public consumption, they're already implementing a lot of these things in our state. It's on our state websites.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the only pathways that I can think of is mass non-compliance, educate yourselves, don't comply, and push for nullification at the state level as much as we can. I mean, I don't know where we can make traction, hoping that Tennessee will be one of the states where we can make traction, but that's the way to go, is to nullify these illegal laws.
Any closing thoughts?
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I invite everyone to read my Substack, where I lay all this out. I've published close to 400 essays now, describing numerous related issues, but pretty much all of this. And it's called Due Diligence and Art. So Substack, Due Diligence and Art, or you can search under my name. And please follow me there. And I appreciate paid subscribers. If you can support me, that's great. If you can't support me, most of my material is in free access anyway. So,
And you're putting out stuff pretty regular. I've started reading it since we talked about a month ago. I've started to read a lot of it, and there's a lot of. I hate to say it, but you don't have any good news in your Substacks. Kind of like I don't have much good news on this show, but there is a lot of good information about what's going on there. But hey, I really appreciate you coming on and spending the time with us. Definitely like to have you back, and I would encourage everybody to really check out her work on Substack. Like I say, you're not going to sleep any better, but it's good information.
No, you're not going to sleep any better. So, but I also publish art there. I publish art, so and people say, "Well, I'm horrified when I read your articles, but like, thank you for the art."
So I was wrong. There was some good stuff out there. It's just on your art site. So. Well, hey, I once again appreciate you coming on, and I love to have you back. And thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. And thanks again, all of you who joined us tonight. And we appreciate you taking the time to watch our program. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Please sign up for our weekly newsletter or at our website, tninformer.com. Also, please find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter to learn. And also, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself here. Apologize. I've got a couple of announcements. If you want to learn the true foundations of the American Republic, you can learn that on Saturday, October 26th from 1 to 6 p.m. Central with attorney and constitutional expert Jeff Cobble, yes, the author of the Nullification Bill. He'll be teaching on that very topic at Peachtree Learning Center, 100 North Main Street, Sparta, Tennessee. Donations are accepted but not required. Text or call 931-316-9639. Our guests for next week will be Christy and Judson Keene, who claim that they were forced off the grid because they refused the installation of a smart meter on their property. Join us for the details on this show. That's it for now, and good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.